All right, three.
Is that it?
We'll be live here in just a second. Yes. So,
Interesting.
all right. So we're trying to get the stream back going here. Let me get open all the participants, and
You're not showing anything, by the way.
yeah, and I'll get that going here in just a
That's
second.
So we're going to go for 3 more hours on this one, right?
I'm hoping so. Yeah, yeah. I mean, we only did 4 hours today, so we can do a good 3 or 4 hours tonight. All right, so we're going to start that virtual cam so you guys can see that. And we'll close that on my end there. We're back. I think we're live. We are back live again on Bookface. And we're back live again on YouTube. And sorry, guys, I had a battery backup go bad in my office here. And I pressed the button to see which one was making the noise. And I turned off the one that my computer was on, and that was not the one that was making the noise. But what do you know? What can you do? So I think the last thing I was asking you about, Diego, was any frustrations you might have had, and I don't remember what you said before all the noise started.
Something about shipping.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
shipping, where the shipping costs twice as much for you.
Yeah, between taxes and shipping, it's crazy, and it takes like a month, and I have to go to customs and the post office and all that. And also for a while, I thought about, hey, maybe everybody seems to like Curious Felines. I wrote a manual that it can be printed out, and I thought, okay, maybe I can sell it on an SD card with a printed manual in a nice box, and kind of,
like a collector's edition or something.
Right. And I started figuring out, and when it came to the part of shipping it from here to anywhere, I mean, it will have been as expensive as a cartridge game.
Right. Well,
like
so
$50, $60.
so then that might be something where you could have somebody overseas do that part for you. You send them all the digital files, and they could produce the labels and SD cards for you, or something. I know you want to do it yourself, but that could be an option, right? So.
Yeah.
Or what about somebody like myself buying like 50 of them, at a discount and then sell them through my store? Is that still you doing it yourself enough for you, or?
No, I mean, I don't mind really doing it myself. If I never thought that anybody will, want to be, I don't know how to say it, take care of that,
Yeah.
It's like selling anything, offering anything, having to ship it. It's always a pain, and I didn't think about trying to bother anyone.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry so much about that, because I'll be honest with you. Once you have to go through a lot of work in order to ship the first thing, but once you've set up to ship the first thing, everything after that is just nothing extra, right? So, like from my standpoint, I have all this stuff set up. I mean, you can't see it. I don't have my camera on, but I have this whole wall of stuff that is just in boxes that's stock. And so if there was another thing, the storefront costs no more money if I have like another 200 products in it versus 100 products in it. It doesn't cost any more money a month. It just costs a certain amount of money every month. And the shipping software I use that prints everything out, it doesn't cost anything more a month if somebody buys something else, like the next thing that somebody buys.
Yeah. So your costs are consistent regardless of quantity of products you offer.
That's right. And putting another box of stuff and sitting on the shelf, and then I do have some high school kids that help me fill the orders. Just telling them, hey, if they order this game or whatever, it's this cartridge. Just put one of them in the bag and ship it out. It's like no big deal. So I would say, if that's your concern, I mean, don't worry about that. If it's something else, then that's fine. But if that's your concern, that is no big deal at all.
Okay, appreciate.
Yeah. And depending on what it is, there are certain places that will fulfill and ship orders for you that they will produce for you too. Like for me, to make a T-shirt costs me nothing. I upload the artwork. People will order a T-shirt on demand. It will be produced and shipped to them. I do nothing but get $1 commission on the sale of the T-shirt, and it costs me no time to do it. You know what I mean? So that's not all. That will not apply to all products, but for some things it does. And at that point, you can sell things online and not have any investment at all in stuff. And the same thing for DVDs, right? So all the digital files for a DVD live on the internet. Somebody can order one of those at any given time. I'll never know it until a month later I get an email saying, hey, you made $2 this month off of whatever. So so that helps in some areas, but not in custom things like this.
Right.
Now, you touched on something that I think is interesting, and we have some people here who can maybe weigh in on this, because everybody's got their own opinion on how they want to produce their, especially people who are producing software right now. So now we can beat on Nick Marentes, and we've got Rick Adams here, who has produced software on a number of different forms of media, and we have Chet Simpson, who will be producing software as well. So there are options for releasing a modern piece of software right now to the current Coco market. So we have digital download. We have physical media like floppy and cassette. We have more modern media like SD cards. And then there is the option for cartridges, just naming a few. So I believe as a software developer, each one of you probably have your own unique take on which medium you would prefer to have your software distributed on. So maybe want to hear some of your opinions on that. And I think some of us here too, who are also consumers, we might have a say in how we would like to buy that software. And I'm wondering where these two preferences and priorities meet. Is Paul Shoemaker still here? We lose Paul. Hopefully Paul will come back. So how about we just start with, I don't even know who, but actually, so Chet Simpson. So right now you're working on Digger 3, and you got probably all kinds of other plans, stuff like that. What are your thoughts on, let's say, your next big thing, whatever your next new Zinger product's going to be? How would you like to distribute that? And do you have a single plan? Do you have a wide spectrum plan?
I really don't have much of a preference as far as just, distribution media goes. There's a lot of things that are problematic, with, doing things like, cassette or disc, because the lifetime of the media and really, how many people are actively using that hardware. And I know a lot of people may have drives, but they may also be using another controller, the SDC or whatever. They may have a little card that they use now instead of a disc. So I try to leave that up to the end user. There are certainly, advantages to certain, distribution methods like the GMC as a ROM pack with a sound card, but you have to be able to fit it in that medium.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Moore is a good example.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So your basic answer is you don't really have a preference.
No, I think that, I don't want to, inconvenience user. I certainly want to make those things available, because there is a nostalgic feel to it. I'd like to distribute it on the original media, but I also don't want to restrict the users in the way that they can acquire that software.
True. Okay. Fair enough. Good. Rick Adams, you have released some new software a couple of different ways, right? You've had stuff on a ROM pack, and you've had things on. You now have digital distribution you can purchase online. And what are your thoughts on future releases, how you would like to do it for yourself, and what would you say to consumers who maybe say, I'd like to get it on, platform X, Y, or Z?
I don't really have much to say. I've done it both ways, and the online distribution is pretty easy. Doing it on a cartridge, an actual physical cartridge, is great for the collectors, but that's
mm-hmm.
a pretty small pool, and they'll do a run of those, and then they'll be out, and then there aren't any more. So if you want to keep it going, you pretty much got to do the online distribution.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's take the new Temple of Rom that you're working on now, right? So let's say you have that finished, and so your new Temple of Rom 2.0 or whatever it's going to be called. What would your first inclination be? Okay, this is ready. I want to release it. Was your first choice going to be buy the DVD package online?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Now, if there was a demand for people who wanted a limited run of it on cartridge, especially since the original Temple of Rom was on cartridge, would you entertain a limited run of a, so they call it the collector's edition hard shell cartridge version of the game.
Yeah. Well, I would entertain that. That's about all I'll say about that.
Okay. Okay.
It wouldn't be a sure thing.
Okay. Now, would you entertain digital only, where somebody could just go online, PayPal you $5-10, and then they get an email copy of the thing, kind of like what Bruce Moore did with Coco Forever? Would you entertain something like that, where I don't even want the plastic? I just want to give you $5 as an attaboy, and I just want to check it out and have it. Would you be open to something like that?
Yeah, I haven't done that yet, but I might.
Right. I mean, realistically,
it's actually pretty likely.
Are there huge concerns right now with piracy now, or the first person who bought the $5 copy has now ruined the market of the 14 sales you would have had, or whatever those numbers are these days?
Well, it's a pretty small pond.
Yeah.
And especially, so it's like with Bomb Threat, I made maybe $200 total, which is not a huge deal. It's not gonna pay for a trip to Disneyland, unfortunately. But it's enough for as I like to say, it's enough for a nice trip, weekend trip to Duluth. So it's
to visit Cousin Ruth.
Yeah. Cousin Root.
Ruth, yeah.
Go up there for a little lunch.
Make it in the disc image, and I'll buy it, guaranteed. Because I don't like the idea of taking a cartridge out in and all the time, just in case something happens to the Coco 3, because they are getting rare to find now. If they blow up on you, you're looking at paying top dollar for another unit. I've been trying to put on one for a Queenslander that's after one, and they're just going over $200-something. That's for a power system without no manuals, nothing. That's just the computer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So in the case of Temple of Rom, Temple of Rom was insanely profitable for me back in the day. So I got a lot of money for that. I bought a new car with the royalties from that. And it's kind of like I've made my Temple of Rom. I kind of have a different feeling about and philosophy about Temple of Rom than anything else, which is, I've pretty much made my nut from that. And now at this point, when I do like a new expanded version of Temple of Rom, do I want to go for maximum profit, or do I want to go for maximum fun?
Mm-hmm.
And for this one, I'm going for maximum fun. So it's a very open kimono type project. I've got the source that is capable of, the source is out on GitHub. If somebody wanted to, they could download it, they could assemble it, they could build it right now, today, and they could have a version of Temple of Rom that was theirs. They go in and monkey with the messages and say special version for Joe Blow, and they can alter it and they could do things. I'm working on I have a very sort of a poor man's level editor right now. And all of that is out there on the GitHub right now on the development branch. So I am using Photoshop to edit a GIF file that has a picture of the maze and where the monsters are, where the treasures are, and you can add to it, you can add walls, you can alter the existing walls, run a little utility that'll generate data files, rebuild the program, and you have something that you did yourself.
Wow.
So now this is not the way you make the maximum money.
Right.
But in my opinion, this is how you have a lot of fun.
Sure.
And that's for this project, that's what I'm going for.
Okay.
It's sort of an experiment, but I don't think I'm taking a really great risk, because what is the worst thing that could happen? Well, the worst thing that could happen is that somebody could download this, build it, and they could start selling it. Well, we don't have anybody that I know of that's that much of a jerk, and they certainly aren't going to be that much of a jerk for like $200,
right?
Which is all you'd get from this, if you totally went for maximum profit. So I'm not too worried.
I got a question for you, Rick.
Just real quick though. So Rick Adams bought one car, but Nick Marentes has actually gotten 3 Ferraris from Popstar Pilot. Just saying.
Got them here in my drawers.
Yeah. I got a question for Rick.
Sure.
Back in the day, like when you wrote Temple of Rom, how did you go about approaching Tandy to, possibly market it for you?
Well, the skids were kind of greased in my case because I knew Dale Lear. Dale Lear was sort of like my best friend at work, sort of a guy. And he did Doubleback, and he researched where do you write in, who do you send a letter to at Tandy to do all this. So he figured all this stuff out for me. So he sent in Doubleback. He actually programmed it onto a ROM cartridge himself. He sacrificed a cartridge and put in a ROM, and because he wanted to prove to them, yes, you really can put this on a ROM. And so he sent that in, and so they bought Doubleback. So I was doing Temple of Rom at the time, and so when it came time, I well, Dale, how'd you do it? Well, here you write to this address, and you write to Mark Siegel, and you send it in to him, a little package. You can. I don't remember how. Probably Dale was able to put it on a disc for me because I didn't have a disc drive back then. So he probably put it on a disc drive and we sent it in, and he said, okay, in like 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks, I don't really remember the length of time. Hear from them back in like say 5 weeks. And I said, okay. So at work I had a calendar and I figured out the math of 2 days have gone by as I submitted it. So that's like 3.5% of the time till I'm going to hear back. So every day I would refigure the math and write down, okay, now it's 5.2% of the time has gone by. And I think it got to like about 37% of, the 5 weeks. And Mark Siegel called me up and said, we'd like to buy the game. And I said, great. And he said, it's a beautiful game. And I said, could you please repeat that?
That's
and
cool.
So anyway, yeah. So I guess that probably answers your question.
Yeah, more or less, just kind of how to
figured out for me, really.
Yeah, because I would have never thought to actually, if I had a completed game, I would have never even thought to like submit it to Tandy or whatever. I knew people obviously did that, but I knew your name long before I ever actually met you. Met you in person out at Tandy, the first Tandy assembly, and we've chatted here many times, and but I don't know, just it was to actually get some software published was something I never thought of actually.
Yeah, it was a mystery to me.
And all the time that I was working on Temple of Rom, I never really thought of it in terms of I'm going to make a game to send to Tandy, because it was just too monstrous of a thought. My thought was, I'm going to do this game and I'm going to do the very best I can on it, as if I were going to submit it to Tandy. I just couldn't think all the way to, to be so brazen as to say, oh, I'm making something for Tandy.
Yeah, right.
And actually having a buddy who sent in a game that got published probably helps, like make you think, well, hey, my buddy did it. Why can't I do it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I did my very best, and when I got done with it, it was like, okay, this is pretty good. I think this actually might fly down at Tandy. So that's what I did.
Cool. That's cool.
And history was made.
Yep. Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
Do you think I could share my screen and show what the graphic looks like?
Yeah. I'm not sharing
anything.
Let's
do that. Yeah. I don't know how to get out of it, but I'll have to figure that out. So let's, I hit the share button and it's opening. Oh, it says, what window do you want to share? Okay. Let's do this one. So, and then I'll say share. Okay. So now can you see it?
Yes.
Yep.
Ooh,
okay.
What are we looking at?
So there it is. So that the green plus sign is the entry point. So when you start the game, you'll show up there. And the little white dot is the hot point. So, and the grid, the gray grid is, you have to have things on that grid because that's multiples of 4. And so I'm going to look up here. I have added a new room. This is, you can recognize this as the original, stuff. Oh, it says my internet connection is unstable. That's great.
Well, most of us on the panel are too, so that's fine.
Here. So there's a spider, and there's a cup, and so when you run it, that new room shows up, and these two objects show up, and the spider chases after you, and all that sort of stuff. So now I need to look at stop share. I can do that. Okay, and you may go on with your lives, citizens.
That was cool. That was really neat looking.
Yeah. So the Photoshop file for that and the GIF file for that are on the GitHub. So it's all, as they say, open kimono. You can look at anything you like. You can see the source. It's commented. William Astle did a wonderful job on that, and then I've added to the comments.
Yeah, that's cool. That was a cool collaboration. So, what happened? Sorry to chat close. Find another stream. I've tried to just copy and paste what Jim Gary just put out there, and for some reason it doesn't seem to be working. We'll take a look at that again in a second. So Rick Adams is looking at digital distribution. Chet Simpson's kind of like, whatever people want to do, that's fine. Now we have Nick Marentes, who has, probably one of the runaway hits of the past couple of years, Popstar Pilot. And he did a pretty unique way of distributing it, where it was done on primarily on a CD-ROM format, but with bonus content. So not only did you get the new game, but you got a video and you got the back catalog of all Nick Marentes' greatest hits. So there was definitely some value added there. So, Nick, what are your thoughts on how you would like to distribute future products? And are you open to any alternative methods of distribution, like SD cards, digital downloads, possible ROM cartridges, etc.?
I'm thinking of digital downloads and probably doing the CD trick like I did last time.
Okay.
Yeah, it seemed to work last time, and also the digital downloads will let me sell the product for even less for those people who don't really buy games but might want to donate essentially money to my work. So they can say, "Oh, here's $10," and they get a digital download, and that's that. But anyone who wants to have a physical package, I was just going to go to one of those, who was it? Kunaki, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And just get them to do a package for me, just on a CD.
Yeah.
And people can then transfer it to a
SD
floppy
card or whatever.
SD card or whatever.
Yeah. So there's been some other interesting stuff. I wish Paul Shoemaker was still here, because Paul Shoemaker did kind of the hybrid approach where he did a limited run of physical floppies. And I purchased those. And again, I do it for a couple of reasons, because I want to support the people who are making stuff. It's kind of like the attaboy pat on the back. Here you go. Here's a couple bucks. Because let's face it, like we said earlier, very few people are really getting rich from this. But you want to make a couple bucks. But I also do it because I like having that tangible piece. It was a neat little package he had. He had the floppies. He had the labels on them. He had a little glossy card telling you how to play the game. There was a little bit of a manual. So to me, when you have the tangible aspect, that's value added. And that was cool in certain games, like the Infocom games that had the manual and had the little red see-through visor thing to decode certain things. And when you got this stuff, there was something cool about that. We don't need it, but I like it, and I would support that, and I would even pay extra for that, to have some of these value-added extra tangibles, collectibles to go with the product. I don't know if I'm in the minority there. We don't have like 100 other consumers here to voice their things on there, but I certainly would like to see more tangible collectibles to go with it. I'm the kind of guy where if I don't, very few of us buy movies anymore, but when I bought a movie, I bought the one that had the DVD and the Blu-ray and the digital download and the bonus content and then the director commentary and the interviews and the behind the scenes. I bought the $40 DVD and not the $19 DVD because I wanted as much crap as I could get for that purchase, because that's just the kind of guy that I am. You know, I'm into this kind of stuff, you know. And there's a market for that. Every time they release a movie, there's the $19 cheap ass, you know, no frills version, and then there's the collector's edition that's got extra stuff. And so I think there's multiple markets and multiple consumers who want different things. So I'm just wondering how much of that plays into Coco content on both hardware and software, you know. Give you another example too. When the Xbox One X, which is the current generation bleeding edge Microsoft console, when that thing first came out, it was called Project Scorpio or something like that, and there was like you could pre-order the Project Scorpio Founders Edition console, and so you had that before anybody else in the store could buy it. And there are, you know, whatever it is, 1,000 people in the world have that one console that they pre-ordered and they have that nobody else has. There might be people who might want to buy a piece of hardware like that, you know, like just for example. Tim Lindner had the first Coco SDC cases were 3D or like clear acrylic cases that you could see through, transparent cases. To me, that's badass. That's really cool. I would love to have one of those now because they're not out there, you know. So I would love the idea if somebody's coming up with a new hardware, dude. How about you get the Founders Edition clear acrylic case, because everybody else is going to get the Welfare 3D printed case after this, right? So. I think there's a certain segment that might do that, you know. I don't know what the percentages are. Anybody, you guys here are all in some sense a consumer too. What are your thoughts on the whole bonus content, special edition type thing?
Yeah, David Murray, the 8-Bit guy, did a video on that because he created that game, that CGA game for PCs, Planet X3, and he's got like the box and the disc. And the the paperwork that has all the artwork on it, because he hired a guy to do the music, he hired a guy to do all the artwork and everything. So it's a whole like retro experience, like the kind of games that you would get back in the 80s and 90s that would have all that extra stuff. And he made a video about how difficult it was for him because he had gotten inundated with way more orders that he expected to get.
Oh, wow.
And so he had to create, you know, each individual disc, because it was all sold on 360K discs. Wow. And so he had to have like parties where he had to have all his friends come over and his wife, and everybody was up, you know, making discs and assembling the boxes, because he had all the boxes printed, and then you had to, you know, put them together and put the disc in, put all the paperwork in, and get it all set up and ready to go. And it took forever because he had way more, you know, than he had anticipated. But so obviously there is a niche out there that that does like that retro experience where you get all that, all those extra bells and whistles that you were talking about, like that you get into. So yeah, absolutely. You know, someone might not want to do all of that extra work because, like, you know, David actually contracted someone to do the music, contracted someone to do all the artwork and all that kind of stuff. When you're running a one-man show, you might not want to do all that. And then if you get, you know, hit with a lot of orders, you got a lot of work to do as well. You might want to just, you know, put something out and say, I want to put it out digitally, and that's it. But, you know, if people are willing to do the work, I certainly think, you know, depending on what environment you're in, obviously I guess retro PC market might be bigger than the retro Coco market. But, you know, yeah, for me personally, I'm not that into that kind of thing, but I do know that there is definitely a market out there for it. There are people that like all those extra bells and whistles and that full retro experience.
Yeah, I mean, Xbox goes as far as like when a new Gears of War comes out, you can get the Gears of War console with the stenciled graphic on the console and a special controller of a different color and the picture of the skull on the joystick, you know. So they go that far out where people who are hardcore into something will buy. You know, when Sony released a Spider-Man game for the PS4 and PS4 Pro a year or so ago, there was a Spider-Man edition console you could buy that was red and blue with like a controller that had a web stenciled on it and stuff, so that's pretty hardcore, and that's obviously, modern, big companies doing that kind of stuff. But wouldn't that be kind of cool with, Gunstar? What if Gunstar, you could get a cool controller like Sheldon McDonald's controller. You could buy the Popstar edition package with the game, not Popstar, but the Gunstar. You got too many games with star in the name there, Nick. Are you? But you know what I mean. So what about the deluxe Gunstar edition, 3D printed, cool Uber stick edition of Gunstar? That's I guarantee you could probably sell 40 of those things if if you promoted that. So I don't know if maybe there's a lack of either imagination or vision or foresight or forethought or even faith in the community and the consumers, but I'm pretty sure that and here's what I also came up with. This is a number I came up with, this because Richard Lorbieski, this is the magic number right now, what I think the market is, and that number is 200, right? Because Richard Lorbieski himself has sold 200 2-meg boards for the Coco 3. So that's telling you that, and we know that the Coco SDC is sold in the 500, 700 into 1,000 units, right?
1,000.
So right now, a new hardware product has sold 200 copies. Nick Marentes, I'm gonna wager and say that Popstar Pilot is probably getting close to 200 copies, because a year ago you'd already sold 100 copies, and the sales still come in, right? So Popstar's got to be 150, 175. So I mean, hardware and software sales, but it's in the ballpark now, right? So, but so I think 200 is a reasonable number. So you got to figure, if we're going to sell 200 of something, there's got to be a percentage of those consumers who are be willing to buy more than just the bare minimal, more than just the digital download or just the floppy or just the CD.
Well,
of the 200, maybe 20 of them are willing to buy an Uber package,
Okay, well, the question is, how much time and effort, is it going to take to do that extra package, and how many sales of that package will it take to recoup that investment of time and effort?
I don't know, but I'm just spitballing.
And I have to say, from the sales figures I've heard, I mean, Nick sold maybe 150 copies of Popstar, but that's quite a bit higher than most other people have done. Everybody else is pretty well under 100, so that's a rather unique situation. I think the average new project is probably selling 50 to 75. So at that point, what percentage would want to go for the Uber package?
Okay, I don't know. All right, so am I the over idealist when it comes to this whole concept here?
Yeah, well, if you're getting into packaging and stuff like that too, you got to consider printing costs and how many are going to do a run of, because like Curtis was saying, typical, you got to judge how many sales you're going to get. Roughly.
Yeah, when you've got the Atari market, their goal is like 100 cartridges,
and that's a big community.
That's a big community. You can't really expect to do that on the Coco. So, I mean, they do a limited production, and then if something's really popular, I think the Pac-Man Arcade, I think that one sold an additional production run of 50 or something like that. But usually they do like 100. So it's,
well,
yeah, I don't know.
Again, maybe I'm an idealist here, but I think if Popstar was on a cartridge, and I know Nick's maybe not excited about the idea of a cartridge, but I think if Popstar, let's say it was only available on cartridge, I'm pretty sure he still would have sold the 150 copies. But again, I don't know. We don't know this for sure, because we'll never know. But
when you get to like the Atari and the Commodore 64, a lot of the people there, they collect cartridges.
That's technically the only way to play a game too, unless you've got one of those SD card readers or Mega ROM packs. So,
but the Coco market, cartridges weren't as big a deal. So I don't know.
I still, this is again, I'm the idealist. I'm pretty sure that something like Cersei's Island, the Steve Bamford thing, and I think Rob Inman has mentioned this too. I think that game is a shining example of an arcade quality game that runs on a Coco 1, 2, or Dragon with music and everything else. I would be surprised if he doesn't sell 100 copies of that. I think a good application will will sell a platform, a distribution platform.
Oh, he'll sell over 100 for sure because he's got the Dragon side of the market.
Yeah,
plus the Coco side. So he's guaranteed 100 at least minimum.
Yeah, so I think that's an example of a new cartridge release that will do well. It's a good quality looking game. It's got a sound chip on it. The music sounds good. It plays like an NES style game. You know, if it's selling for $40 or whatever that price is going to be, I think that's a fair price for the quality of the game and the fact that it's in a cartridge and the whole 9 yards. And I think that product will sell 100 copies.
For sure. That's why anyone that does a Coco 1-2 game, they should be looking at making it compatible with the Dragon as well if they want to increase their sales, to me. They might as well use the market. I would if I could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if I was putting out software for the Coco, I wouldn't be expecting to get rich off of it. If I was trying to make money through software or through like running games and things like that, I'd head down the iOS Android platform because nobody has computers anymore. Everybody has phones,
right?
So and you sell a million copies of Popstar Pilot on iOS at $1.99 a piece. That's 70%. What's 70% of 2 million?
Right.
$1.4 million. Now you're cooking.
Now he actually could buy those Ferraris.
Yeah.
Once Ed releases that Gimme X, I reckon you're gonna watch an increase of the Coco 1, 2, and maybe even some of the Dragon games increase in sales because the ones that have got a Coco 3 will be able to do the semi-graphics, all those special modes that don't quite work. The Gimme X is going to allow us to actually play those games without having to go out and get extra, like a TV, for example, to do the composite colors. We just flick a switch on the back of the Gimme X and it'll display in color.
Right.
We don't need to worry about that side. Yeah, we don't need to worry about that stuff anymore. It's going to open up a market there for us as well.
That's definitely possible.
Yeah, but I think no matter what you do, whether it's hardware or software, I don't see that you're going to make a ton of money.
Well, it's not about money. I think it's more about volume of units and what is the market. What do you guys? That's the spitball here. I think the magic number is a comfortable 200 on hardware and a comfortable 100 on software. What do you guys think? Those are my round numbers.
Software maybe if the game's good enough, because right now out of all the games we've had out in the last few years, and maybe not, which Rick was still on here to mention how many copies he sold, and then stuff John Strong sold and Bruce Moore and John Linville and everybody else. How many have actually sold 100 so far? Because so far from my talking to the people, now I haven't obviously talked to them lately about it, but the only one who hit 100 was Nick.
Okay, well,
no other program has sold that many yet.
I think Forest of Doom was close to 100, though. I think Bruce one time said
70.
Recently,
I think I think he said 70.
So that's still pretty respectable.
I've still got to buy some of those games.
Now let me ask you this: now, why do you think it is that? And this is not picking on Nick, but I'm just he's here. So Nick obviously has set the bar on volume. So let's just say it's 150. So Nick has sold 150 units. That's the impressive number of the past couple of years. Why do you think it is that this one game did that well and many of other products haven't necessarily done as well? What are your thoughts? And this is not bashing or endorsing things, but
quality.
I have two thoughts on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
One is the quality of the game. I mean, it's definitely professional level. It would have been professional back in the day too.
Yeah.
And two, his bundle.
The
having
value
all
added.
of his previous games already there, ready to go. I mean, you're getting
it's a good,
almost 10 games.
deal.
I mean, that's
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's
that's
a good value added.
Value added. Okay.
And I agree. The just the quality. I think could just imagine how well that would have done as a cartridge back in the 80s.
Okay, let's take something like Timberman, who came out recently. Timberman's pretty good quality too. Doesn't have 5 levels or whatever, but it's still a good looking quality game. I don't know what the numbers are in Timberman, and there were free versions of it. But how many Timbermen do you think are out there? And do you think there's 100 Timbermen out there in the market?
I don't know.
I'd be very surprised if there was.
I would be very surprised.
But that is a game that I feel is of adequate quality. Again, I don't think it's any less quality of a game than Popstar. It's just not as many levels as Popstar, right? So, but it's Coco 3. It looks good.
You gotta go with the style, the look.
The genre of the game.
What type of a game? The genre.
That's what sells.
Yeah,
it's the genre that sells the game.
Okay.
Also, what's your base market? Is it a Coco 1.2 compatible game and Coco 3? Is it Coco 1.2 exclusive? Is it Coco 3 exclusive? There's a lot of different things to worry about.
Like, Chet could have made money off his Digger. The last one he just released. He could have easily sold a shitload of copies of that game because we didn't have that style of game, not with the background detail it's got in it. That just... The last one was what? Popstar. They had the background, all pixels were actually coloured up with some sort of look to it. That was the last one. Those two, because they would have sold shitloads.
Right.
But Chet gave it to us for free. He could have sold it, actually.
So, Chet, are you planning on selling anything down the road?
I really haven't put much thought into it. No, so probably not. No.
Okay. But you're going to continue to develop new quality products, software and stuff, but you're not really focusing on the sales piece of it.
No, I mean I've got a particular goal, what I'm trying to accomplish. So it's that's my focus.
I'll even donate money to you, Chet, if you want.
Actually, I think Chet has said that if you want to donate money, give it to a charity. Right?
Whatever, animal shelter or whatever.
Yeah, and I think Steve Bjork had said something like that too. So it's too bad Steve's not here again. We had him before the power loss. He's a guy who's got some experience in sales and marketing over the years.
They're rolling. He'll come back in 5 or 10 hours. So.
For part 2.
I mean, for me, it's like Nitrous 9. We sold, back in the 90s, we sold, probably 150, 200 copies of it. Sometimes bundled with 639, sometimes just the software. I have no intention of making that commercial again. And we distribute it digitally mainly because we're distributing a hard drive image, and it's pretty impractical to do anything else unless I want to send out SD cards, I guess. But it's just easier for everybody just to download and install it.
Polly Fiscarelli, you there? We might have put Paul to sleep. Paul's working on some projects, and he did his Run Dino Run, which was really cool, and he's released that. What do you guys think of something like the SD card? The SD card is tangible. It's not very expensive to produce or ship, and it's and it pops right into your Coco SDC. How many of you would consider releasing something where you could buy a physical SD copy of your product?
I would buy one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're fairly cheap too. That's the big thing.
Yeah, the people that are buying an SD card hardware, they're the ones spending money on hardware, so they're going to be more likely to spend money on the software, I think. So that would be a viable option, if you ask me.
Right, and SD card has got enough room on it where you could still do the Nick Marentes model, where you could have value-added stuff, right? You could have digital documentation on the SD card in addition to the disk image.
And it makes shipping pretty easy because you can...
Super small.
Yeah, it's super small, easy to ship. Just protect it in an envelope, and it's, cheap to ship.
Yeah.
But they've got to have an official sticker on it,
Yeah, those are easy enough to make. They make the Avery labels for that.
Yeah, you can make a tiny little. You can make a tiny little, cartridge case for them, and have a little slide in.
Like I don't know where I put it right now. I'm actually, matter of fact, I just found it.
And you can make your software auto boot off.
So I mean, exactly. I've got this thing here that Antonio Jimenez made for us, which was the Tandy SD pack, where he had a little project where you basically make like a ROM pack SD card, and he came up with the template to print the label, and has a whole website on this, right? SD-pack.
Can you zoom that up on screens for the viewers there, Stevie?
Okay. Let me find my camera. So like this is the SD card, and this one's got Slay the Neries on it, right? And so it's basically a reproduction of the ROM pack image, just printed on a label on the SD card. And so this is a single purpose self-booting SD card that boots up like a ROM pack, right? And then he even went as far as made a custom 3D printed case with a lid that opened up to hold these, right? So this is one that says Tandy on the lid, and it holds a whole bunch of these little SD cards, and he came up with all these labels. If I can get this one out.
For existing games.
Like this is Canyon Climber, right? And so
Timberman was distributed with a label,
on an SD card with a label and glossy documentation. So to me, this is an interesting distribution method where it won't cost you that much to print the label. You can get these Avery labels, and again, I think it's sd-pack.com is the website where he showed you exactly how to make the labels using. I think he's even using poor man's tools like MS Paint to actually do all this kind of stuff. So it's not even like an expensive Photoshop program or anything.
And they're not dear to buy.
Yeah, and then he found a website where you could get the SD cards for like 99 cents on eBay or whatever hell it was.
Yeah.
So,
if you're going to do a hardware distribution, I think that is the best one because it has a couple of advantages besides cost, size, cost of shipping. It's dirt cheap because you can fit in an envelope. But it also allows you to put as much stuff on there as you want because, I mean, there's a ton of room.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the floppy image is 160K.
Well, if you have like a dungeon crawler, just think how many levels and how many monsters or images or whatever you could put on there.
Yeah.
The other big advantage too is that it works with the hardware, the real Coco, the SDC, which is the most common hardware peripheral for right now. But it also works on your PC, Mac, or Linux box to copy it for running on an emulator. So if you're running an emulator, it still works for you because you just plug it into your SD card reader and away you go.
Yeah. So I think that's a compelling option for those who are just hell-bent on ever putting their product on a cartridge. This is a tangible thing you could still put your software on, and you could still make it auto-boot like a cartridge, right? You have that startup.config file on the root of the hard drive, and you have your AutoExec BAS file in your folder, and then boom, it's going to boot, right? And so
that's what that Jupiter's saying. If you look at the side, I make mods for games, but I tend to get a lot of hate from the game developers. So he must be doing something similar to what you just mentioned, Steve.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say that's what he's been doing.
And Rob Inman saying he bought the SD pack at CocoFest, so that's cool, right? So, and so that's a way where you could provide a little bit of a value added, and it's a way. And I think people are probably more likely to hand you a few bucks if they're getting something that they can actually put in their hand, right? It's kind of hard to have this virtual transaction. Here's $10 real for this digital, non-tangible game that I'm going to get to you from the airwaves. But if I hand you this physical little memory chip that you put in the palm of your hand, you almost feel like you're getting some value for that transaction. You know,
it's like using a floppy disk, isn't it?
Yeah,
the old days of putting a floppy in, taking it out.
Yeah,
you're just doing it with an SDC card or the cartridge itself.
Yeah.
It's no different.
Rob Inman saying you could release a game for Nitrous 9 with the entire OS distributed on the SD card. Yeah.
That's basically what I'm doing right now.
Yeah, so that's definitely an option, right? Which is kind of cool.
And there's bonus content for you there too, because they don't make small SD cards that fit a floppy-sized image and that's it, right? So basically, you get this card with a single game, or even a bundle of games like Nick did, and then you still have like 120 gig free on your card, or
you could add what you want on it,
and you could put video on there, like a making of video documentary of the things, like the video. Like Nick was doing vlogs for a while, so he could include all of the vlogs of the Gunstar site and artwork, and like because I like buying. Another thing I used to love to buy, which you don't get anymore, but I like to buy the strategy guides for even modern games. Not because I use them to cheat, but I like them as collector's items, and I like the value-added content. I love that you get to see production art, like what sketches did they draw.
You can also put like the PDF manual on it.
Yeah. So you got your digital documentation. You could have you could have kind of like the director's commentary. Here's a copy of my blog in PDF format, so you could read the whole story of how I made Gunstar. And here's like version 1 when I first designed the spaceship, and here's what the spaceship ended up looking like. I love like the old like Ralph McEwen
behind the scenes
sketchbooks and how they drew the Star Wars spaceships before they were made for the movie. Here's what the sketch looked like. Here's what the Millennium Falcon looks like now. I love to see that kind of stuff. That would be really cool. And at that point, you're not really robbing your customer. You're giving them something that more than just the game. There's a lot.
And for the developer themselves, the advantage is that this costs you time. It's not costing you more to add more stuff to a cartridge or to make 5 floppy disks to hold all this extra stuff or whatever. It's the cost. Your basic physical cost is exactly the same. Your shipping cost is exactly the same. It's up to you to create as much bonus content as you want. It's just your time.
Right. And what do you think a fair price is for the SD card with the actual new game and the bonus content and whatever paper packaging and distributing. Is it still fair to charge $20 for that? I think it is.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go past 20. I mean,
okay.
The reason a cartridge costs so much is because you've got physical hardware. You have circuit boards, you have chips, you have plastic molds or 3D printed stuff. I mean, those, and you have shipping costs too because of the size.
Right.
It depends on the game. It's got to be the quality of the game. If it's pushing new features and new techniques and standards in a game, then I'd pay up to $25-$30 for it.
Okay.
Because I think it's worth paying the author of the game the money they've spent the time creating a new style game that hasn't been done before. Like Popstar. Look at stuff that Nick did in it. That wasn't done before in a game.
Right.
And as Nick pointed out, if you price it low enough, you'll get people who just want to support the Coco and the Coco market in general, who never play games. Like James Jones has done this numerous times. He's not a game player. He never will be a game player. But to support the Coco market, if the game's an affordable thing like $10-$20, he'll pay for it anyway. He'll never touch it, but he'll fire it up once to see what it looks like, basically.
Well, one of the ideas I had, and I kind of ran out of time at Coco Fest and other things, but a few of you have them. But I had when I showed off my Cosmic Aliens for the Tandy 1000, the original version. I have a limited run of 10 physical floppies made. I didn't have. I wanted to make like a Ziploc bag and a little insert and like make it look like the whole cheesy software it used to be. Just kind of ran out of time. But half a dozen people got a physical copy of a 5 1/4-inch 360K floppy with my original Cosmic Aliens game on it. And it was kind of cool for me just to give that to a few people as a giveaway. I would feel comfortable selling something like that, even though, listen, my game is not, you guys are saying I'll pay X dollars if the game is of a certain quality. I think there's something cool where, like, listen, Cosmic Aliens is not a great game, but if it's on a floppy and it's in a Ziploc baggie and it's got a little, printed thing and a label, I think $10 for that is fair. And, you probably got $5 in parts and labor in there. So even though the game is not necessarily high quality, I think there is that magic number, that sweet spot on what you can charge and what people will pay for it, regardless of the quote unquote quality of the game or the the depth of the game. I don't know.
I think between $0 and $30 that's a nice area.
Yeah,
for paying for a game. That's what I think is nice. $20 for the actual guy who programmed it, that's what they're making, and $10 for the hardware, all the bits and pieces that make up the rest.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
I think that's reasonable.
There you
go. At least $20 times 100 customers. How much is that?
That's, I don't know, that's $2,000. Is that 2,000?
That's Popstar Pilot money there.
That's Popstar Pilot money right there.
That's perfect.
Cool. Is Paul Fiscarelli, are you there? Are you asleep? Have we lost you? He's holding up that mug of douchery there. I don't know if we lost Jim Brain there. Maybe so do we want to get back to Dev Talk? Have we talked enough? Anybody want to talk about anything else? I know I'm just kind of throwing topics on the wall here to see what sticks. Anybody else got anything you guys want to talk about?
You guys are kind of rambling.
Earlier you were talking about like digital only versus some sort of physical thing to put in hand. And I can tell you, as someone who's been selling stuff in Second Life for 13 years, I haven't made a ton of money. I haven't been active in it for a very long time, but a lot of people have made a lot of money in Second Life, and you never get anything physical, and everything you buy is some sort of digital asset that you're gonna that technically may not even last forever, because I've seen items
the platform goes
well, that's basically, you're looking at mobile gaming at that point. It's the same thing. Stuff gets pulled out of the store, company goes out of business, and the server goes down, and all of a sudden you can't play your multiplayer online anymore.
I'll give you
I don't think they're in danger of going anywhere, but I mean, I've seen digital assets get created that ultimately, like down the road, get banned. Not so much now, but back in the day, people would make nefarious tools and such and sell them. And then when the company caught wind of it, they kind of just took those items away. And if you paid for them, I said, oh, well, too bad.
I'm just saying stuff like Blizzard. I mean, they made a bunch of online games, in the old days that the servers are no longer supported. So you don't play those anymore. Sometimes they'll be smart and release, that allow other people to set up their own servers so you can still play the old games. But I mean, games are a lot more like old Coco games. You can play them 40 years later. They still work. A lot of the online stuff, you try to do it 40 years later, nobody even knows what the protocol was for the server. So toast.
Sure. It's a lot of that got abandoned too, because they got hacked and such. That was what I.
Or the company just went on to other things and just well, we're not supporting that. That takes too much money for us to support it. So.
But there is one Coco game that used the internet, didn't it, back in the day? P51 or something that you.
It was dial-up.
Fight it.
Yeah, it was just dial-up modem. It wasn't. Internet.
But that was against someone across the country or something, wasn't it? Like
it was a one-on-one type of thing.
Yeah, you could.
Yeah, and if it wasn't there, the other person, what happened to that game? Were you just looking at a blue?
You could fly around.
And that was it, couldn't you?
Yeah, you could fly around as a standalone game. It wasn't very graphical, but you could fly around it as standalone. And if you had the dial-up connection, you would see the actual other person.
It was actually
fly around.
So that's a game
a little globe
like
moving around that you could shoot at. There was supposedly a drone moving around that you could shoot at, but it wouldn't shoot back or avoid your shooting.
Yeah, and there was like a runway, and that's it.
Yeah, it was meant to be a 2-player game. I mean, that was.
So technically, it's the same as what you were talking about, Curtis. Once you didn't have the other side.
No, it's not. It's worse than the modern one because with some of these games, if you don't have a server, you can't play it. Period. Like you're done. Yeah. There's nothing. Yeah.
Well,
you paid $50 for a game, and 10 years later, it's gone. Yeah, you can't use it anymore. Your $50 is down the tubes. It's disposable income.
That's where we are right now with modern PC and console gaming. It's digital distribution
and mobile.
And you are dependent on the server. I've got at one time it was 2 years ago. This was a $500 gaming console, the Xbox One X. When I bought it new, it was $500. And if the internet's down or if their login service is down, I can't play anything on that console because it needs to connect to the mothership for me to do anything. I cannot play locally installed games. So what's going to happen 5-10 years from now? What the thing I paid $500 for in my $500 software library that's living on this hard drive, they're going to be unusable, right? So
which device is this?
This is the Xbox One X, right? So so this is what a future retro community is going to have to deal with, right? Right now we're talking about the 40-year-old Coco. When somebody's having to figure out how to fire up the 40-year-old Xbox that needed an internet and a network and a mothership and authentication, somebody's going to have to figure out the middleware to run this as a retro system in an ecosphere that's long gone. So that's a future challenge. And to me, I think when you start going digital, it's harder for future archaeologists to know how to recreate this stuff because there's nothing there. Like you can look at
that's an even bigger problem in mobile because if you go back to like iOS 2, 3, or the early versions of Android, some of the games they did uniquely then the company went out of business or the guy passed away or whatever it was. You can't even play those anymore on the modern ones. You can't.
There was
load them. You can't install them. You can't do nothing.
There was some game that one of the online distribution places was giving away for free, and people downloaded it, wanted to play it, and they couldn't because there was no server.
Diego, was that you were holding up, was that Microsoft cell phone? Yeah, is that what's that muted. Called?
It's a Palm. It's a Palm.
Palm OS.
HP, the Prem.
Oh, Palm. Okay, I thought for a minute there it was that one Microsoft phone that came out.
Oh, yeah.
That they sold like 10,000 of them, and they discontinued it because they only sold like 10,000. It was like somewhere like a tween between a smartphone and a feature phone. It like had Facebook built in, but you couldn't like load software on it, and nobody bought it. And they literally made millions of them and sold 10,000 of them.
Wow.
Mikey in chat's giving you a perfect example that actually relates to the Coco World. Double Back for iOS is now gone.
Right.
There was an iOS version of Double Back?
Yeah, Dale there had done it.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, I bought a copy at the time.
And now it's gone, even though you bought it.
Yeah.
You can't get it anymore.
Yeah,
that's the thing. This is all dispensable games now. This is not like the old days where if I bring my old hardware and I bring my old disc and the disc still physically works, that I can play the game just like I did in the old days. That's not the case anymore.
Yeah, well, the way that works with the iOS store is the content creator that puts it on the iOS market and the App Store. They can take it down anytime they want.
But there's also the problem that when they make a new version of iOS, sometimes the old ones don't work anymore. They start disabling 32-bit apps or anything else, and if the developer's no longer around, too bad, the game's gone.
Right.
Has nothing to do with whether the developer
also like
kept it on the store or not.
Fees, right?
Yeah.
So they have to pay fees to stay part of the developer network and be part of the marketplace, things like that, don't you? So
no, you your items get hosted for free, and for every sale you make, Apple takes 30%. for hosting it and providing the bandwidth for the download.
Yeah, you don't have to be part of the developer network to do that. But on the other hand, if you say you wrote an app for iOS 3 and it was a 32-bit app, they discontinued all 32-bit apps. What, iOS 11 or something? I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah,
so
but basically, all that, the entire library of 32-bit games gone.
Right.
You cannot run them on a modern phone.
I got yelled at for an hour the other day because Catalina, the latest version of Mac OS, no longer you can't run the older versions like Mojave, last year's version Mojave and the year before High Sierra, would let you know that it would say this app needs to be updated. But what it was saying is this is a 32-bit app, it'll run, but not forever. And now that Catalina's out, nothing 32-bit will work. And yeah, I think it was iOS 11 or 12 when 32-bit went away. And you're right, if someone had an app on the App Store, but I mean, it's so ridiculously simple to just update Xcode, recompile your code from 32-bit to 64, and update your app on the App Store.
If you're around to do it. Rick Adams, Double Back, perfect example. He's not here to update it, so that game is just gone.
Yeah, Dale Lair can't do it.
Sorry, Dale Lair. Yeah. But I mean, there's lots of games like that, or the company went out of business, so they're not going to, there's nobody left to do it either, too. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a ton of it. And that's a whole different scheme of the way things are done now compared to the old days.
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm saying, though, is there's a lot of people out there that could update their stuff, but they just won't because, if you bought my app and I need to update it to 64-bit, any work I do, even though it's not a lot, it's not going to make any money for me because you're just going to go and re-download it from the updated version from the store for free.
Well, the existing consumers, but there might be new people who hadn't bought it yet, then now could.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If I had stuff like that up, I would definitely keep up with it. I would certainly try to. But, people pass away and things like that, I suppose, and, that kind of thing happens. But, it's like you said, well, that's why they're $2, to $5.
Yeah. So if you lose it, is it the end of the world? It's hard to say, but so the whole other area now too is these microtransactions, all this in-game currency, like what John was talking about, how people buy stuff in the Second Life. All modern games on mobile and even on console, you buy the game, but guess what? For it's just like the real world. Cash is king. You can play the regular game as a regular person, but, for an extra $20, you can buy some upgraded armor and weapons, and now you're better than the average player. And there are a lot of people who do that.
Or if you want to advance faster than the standard box.
So the pay-to-win type idea there. So free-to-play, pay-to-win is what they talk about most of the games you get now, right? So
I usually call it free to pay.
Yeah, free to pay.
Take care, Nick. Yeah, free to pay.
Yeah.
Take care, Nick.
Yeah, I've got to go. Yep, I got an appointment to go see the latest Terminator movie.
Oh, excellent! I hear good things about it.
Dark Fate. Yeah.
Yep. All right. See you later.
Take care.
Nick.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, it's with the the business model these days seems to be here, download the game for free and we'll nail you with the in-game in-app purchases.
Yeah, or the 0-day update. The day you break the seal on the disc to install it, you got to download the 50 gigabyte update because we shipped a incomplete product.
Or one that's just so dated that we need to get it updated to the latest version.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. James Diffendaffer, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Anything you want to chime in since you have developed a thing or two? You've optimized code. You've developed things. Any stories you want to share?
Oh, man. Since I haven't released anything for, a modern Cocoa market, I really can't speak from experience on that, and it's totally different than things were back in the day when I was developing Amiga software. I mean, we used to ship out 100 of a particular title in one order to a distributor, at a time back in the day. And we used a disk copy machine, 3.5-inch disk. You can use a machine to do it, and it would copy and verify everything. So we'd put a stack of 50 discs in and start it, and we'd glue together the packaging and stuff all night long, and then we'd ship out the shipment in the morning with UPS. And it's without a huge active market, I don't think you're going to do a lot of $40 titles. So the cartridge is going to have to be. The cartridge is definitely more desirable. It's more of a collector type of thing, but I don't think you're going to sell a huge number of those, just partially because you've got to unplug the Coco SDC.
Yeah.
And then plug in the cartridge. And there's that. But there's a huge advantage to a cartridge game if you're on a Coco 1 or 2, in that you can have a large ROM and copy some of the stuff to RAM, and any routine that has to be fast can be run in high speed mode
from the ROM.
Yeah. And so,
or you can just buy Ed's new SAM doubler thing, which does the same thing in RAM and ROM.
Okay, well, I don't know anything about that. I've been busy working, but it's. I think my philosophy on the stuff I've been working on. There's a couple of games I was working on that died in a fire, and I plan to give them away because they were clones of existing games. But people that do totally new, unique titles, it's their idea. It's totally their work, and I don't see anything wrong with them wanting to make something for it. A lot of people want you to give away games that the people that are going to pay for it are going to pay for it, and the people that aren't going to pay for it are going to find a way to get it without it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like piracy back in the day. We had a choice of putting copy protection on our discs or not. And, it's like, well, the people that aren't going to pay for it are going to go out and buy some copy program, and somebody's going to figure out the parameters to defeat what we spent weeks trying to develop. And then it's going to be everywhere anyway. So
you're just slowing down the inevitable.
You're slowing down the inevitable. I remember releasing what was it? I don't even remember what program it was, but it ended up with it was unprotected, and some moron put a crack intro at on the start of the boot up on the disk, and then uploaded it to a BBS within, I think, 3 days of when we released it.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't think the Coco market's in that same state now, because I think a lot of us, as Steve's mentioned before, have disposable income now, and we want to help the authors. So I don't think piracy is a big problem in the modern Coco market.
Look at where are they distributing the pirated stuff? They're going to just email it to somebody or something like that. It's not going to be on your Coco archive. Unless someone, creates a demo version or something like that,
Oh, so you're saying, for example, right now, if somebody was wanting to bootleg Popstar Pilot, which is something that Nick is selling, they're not going to put that on the archive where everybody can get to it.
Right. Well, there's somebody running the archive.
Yeah, they'll put it on the dark web.
Yeah. I just don't think there's that much of that going on these days for the retro community, because, like I said, I think most people want to support, because if you can't even sell 100 copies of it, you're not going to bother.
Right.
If you're trying to make at least your time back. If you want
someone to make new games, and they sell 20 copies and everybody has it, 1,000 people that have Coco SDCs have it. It's like, why would I spend time doing it again?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, unless you're a saint like Chet, who's gonna just give donations.
Well, is a lot of the commercial software that was available years ago as commercial software, is any of that considered like abandonware? where there's they're basically out of business.
They're
on a personal view, yes. On a legal view, there's no such thing.
Technically, it's the life of the copyright holder plus, what is it, 70
95 years now or something stupid?
Oh, they may have extended it further, yeah.
Thank you, Walt Disney.
Yeah, but I mean, abandonware was basically defined as the company's out of business and they don't really chase anybody.
Okay, here's the deal. The Congress made a special exemption for archiving the software so that it's legal to reverse engineer or whatever, so that you can preserve it or whatever. However, distribution is still, you can give it out, and if nobody sues you, then it's legal. But if somebody sues you, well, then you're in trouble.
Liable. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's some software out there. I'm not talking about like video arcade ROMs and stuff like that.
You can go out there and download 1,000 old PC games. There's ones on, there's torrents with everything from like the 90s
and 80s
and whatever, and it's all supposedly all abandonware, but it's.
But abandonware is just a term that people have made up. Legally, there's no such thing.
It's not a legal term. It's like copyrights are enforced by the copyright holder.
Yeah. If nobody's there to enforce it or nobody does enforce it, you can get away with it. Technically it's not legal, but you're not going to get.
And there are some cases where programmers have created a special license, and by downloading it, you agree, that they still own it and whatever.
Right. And also, I'm not advocating like pirating software, but if there's a company out there that made a product, say back in the late 80s or early, sometime throughout the 90s or something, and that company's long since out of business, and there's no one to pay to buy that product anymore. There's no one to buy it from.
It doesn't matter. Whether
it doesn't.
Whether it's for sale or not, it's still protected by copyright.
Yeah. Okay.
It's just
from a legal standpoint, yes.
From a legal standpoint, that's the way the law is written.
Take a look what happened to the Commodore 64 when they cloned Mario, and Nintendo just went after them.
Well, you got to remember that's you've also got Mario is intellectual property.
Exactly.
He's a
mascot for the.
Well, no, it's like Mickey Mouse. Even though the copyright should have expired on Steamboat Willie or whatever, Mickey Mouse is also a what is the other?
A trademark or whatever?
Trademark.
Yeah.
Or something.
What's interesting about the whole Nintendo thing is they're like Disney. They really go after you if you go out.
They're very aggressive.
Yeah, they're extremely aggressive. But at one point, Nintendo came out with one of those little like Nintendo units that are have all kinds of games built into them.
NES, yeah.
Like a mini game, and I guess someone hacked it and took it apart and saw that they were just using the emulator, and the emulator contained the same hack file that the emulator guys made to make,
and it was basically
Nintendo emulators. So yeah, they were basically
they violated somebody's.
Yeah. To make because they were basically
which is why it disappeared from the market.
Yeah, I mean, in my case, my Coco Games site, like all the ones I have for download, and I don't have all the ones I could have up there, but I've gotten permission from the authors themselves to say, yeah, go ahead and do it. I'm not selling this anymore. I don't have any trademarks.
And that is the copyright owner has now basically said.
Yeah. Now there's a little bit of stuff going on there too, because some of the programmers have given permission to distribute their game, but they sold the game to a company, and that company owned the copyright.
Yeah, it depends on the license. So, like we were talking to people that have written for Tandy, like Rick Adams has got all of his stuff reverted back to him, and same with Steve Bjork, though he had to buy them from AST.
Right, and I think that it's mostly like in the Spectrum market. There have been a bunch of old games and stuff that there was permission, and then somebody bought up the rights to characters and whatever all the games were that a company had. They tracked down somebody that was one of the owners, and they bought up the rights, and now they're going after everybody that's using anything from the games,
like a Cuthbert type character or something.
Oh, that whole Cuthbert thing, yes, that's that ridiculousness. Yeah,
interesting.
And I mean, and there's there's some history here, because this conversation, this is not the first time that anybody's had it, and certainly not going to be the last. And I know Curtis probably remembers some of this. I mean, this discussion went back, goes back to actually the late 80s and even early 90s. But there was a huge discussion on the listserv around 96 with who was it? Terry somebody. Mid-Iowa Cocoa.
Oh, right, yeah. That was his name.
Yeah, so I mean, and what it boils down to is I mean, this is whether they registered it or not, it's still their intellectual property. They own it. And I mean, if you really wanted to be a stickler about stuff, most of the stuff about the cocoa that's around right now would probably be gone.
Yeah, if you put the copyright notice on it, it's copyrighted.
Yeah, you don't have to register with the Copyright Office either. It just has to have that.
You do not have to register it. However, it makes it easier to pursue them legally if you registered.
No, what it means is that if you don't register your copyright, you can't pursue damages.
But you can still halt distribution, though, correct?
Right. You can still take them to court. You can still sue them, but you can't sue them. I forget what particular damages, but you're not going to get anything out of it.
Okay.
So I mean, it certainly means that I went through I've been through this with my stuff, and luckily the guy that was representing me, he used to actually be a software engineer, so we were really on the same page with a lot of stuff. And I used to work for Disney, and you're absolutely right. They are absolutely inattentive about protecting their property. In fact, back in the early the mid 90s when I was working for them, remember when Anastasia came out?
Yep.
Remember it got buried at the box office because Disney re-released The Little Mermaid, because that was their territory, and they protect their intellectual property in a lot of places. So I mean, whether somebody's out there actively doing it or not, they still own that property.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I mean, there's actually some posts about it on the Delphi archive as well. Both of those are in the archive up on the Color Computer archive as well. So.
Age-old question, right? So if a game is pirated in the woods and no one's there to see it, is it really a crime? So
yes, from a legal standpoint, yes. Will you get in trouble for it? That's a different story.
Yeah, not likely. In most cases, not likely.
Yeah, I mean, and we all recognize that at this point in the life of the Cocoa and the community, that it's not a big issue, except for those who are active in the community. We certainly want to make sure that those are protected. And if somebody did step up and say, "Hey, don't post that," it would certainly be removed. I've seen that happen, plenty of times. So it's the Barden books are not up there. One of my favorite things.
Stuff,
yeah. So we do try to respect that. So there is that aspect of it, but this is not a conversation that is going to ever stop happening. It is something that's going to come up probably once every couple of years. I bet. I would guarantee it.
It seems to me that copyright arguments have been on the mailing list for as long as there's been a Cocoa mailing list.
Yeah.
You can go back to BBS days. It was actually being discussed before the mailing list.
And BBSs and CompuServe and
Delphi.
It's
Rusty and Edie's.
Yeah.
Anybody remember Rusty and Edie's BBS? It was this gigantic, 75 PCs were networked together. And they had all kinds of legal and illegal software available. And because of the illegal software, the FBI raided them and shut them down.
Wow.
They were right in this area, in the Northeast Ohio area. But it was huge. It was the biggest BBS in the country. 70. Can you imagine 75 PCs all networked together into a BBS?
That's insane.
Yeah. Crazy.
Cool. Well, have we talked enough development talk? I mean, this is cool. I've enjoyed listening to you guys.
One thing I want to add, when someone says that they will happily work on a test program to test out a piece of hardware, and they ask for a little documentation so they know how to program the hardware, and the person does not supply that documentation, they should not complain that the people did not supply the test program. Just saying. Just adding that little footnote there.
Tidbit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we started the show with setting realistic expectations for the hardware developers versus the software developers and things like that. There was something else I wanted to say. I can't remember.
Sure,
what it was.
Stevie?
Yeah, there's David Ladd. David, why are you in the call twice? I mean, it's bad enough I have to see you once. Now I'm seeing you twice.
But Stevie, you know you like seeing me multiple times. Come on.
I wish
he wants to be quadraphonic.
I wish Paul
Cross
was
your eyes,
off
you'll
mute.
see him 4 times.
Yeah. Love to hear from Paul because Paul's developing a few things. So I'm going to throw in just 2 cents here, and so today I showed you guys this game, right? That I did on the Coco VJ. That I'm going to continue to kind of see it to the finish line of what it is for what it's worth, and then move on. But it was important to me that for me to do this, I didn't want to make it an announcement. It was important to me that I actually showed you a playable, proof of concept that this is something I'm going to do, and here's a taste of what it's going to look like. I could have easily said, "Hey, I got this great idea," and I've done it a million times. I've got plenty of ideas. I can come up with ideas all day long. My challenge is taking it from concept to completion and staying motivated, staying disciplined, and everything else. I have finished jack shit in my 5 years of wanting to start a project on the color computer. I have finished nothing. I have started a couple of things. I have finished 0 things. So I know what my bad habits are. And that's why I'm kind of asking you guys, do you guys ever lose motivation? Do you need help staying on? Because for me, I am so easily sidetracked and distracted by shiny objects, and I lose interest, I lose motivation, I get bored. So I don't know if anybody else struggles with that, or you guys are all just like superhuman and you just
everybody,
sure.
Sure. But the one thing I wanted to do was I didn't want to just have an announcement. It would have been real easy to say, here's my idea for the game, and let me even show you some fonts. Here's some cool fonts I made, and I'm going to make this project, and that still would have been cool. But I wanted to take it a step further and get down to showing you something that resembled an actual piece of software. So that was important to me. And I think that, when we talk about development and stuff, we're going to run into this. There's going to be a lot of announcements and a lot of intentions, and we've thrown out the word vaporware, and we're kind of poking fun at certain people for either releasing or not releasing a thing. But I think there is some challenge to this. There's a challenge to you want to do it, and then for whatever reason you can't. There's a challenge of, hey, I announced this intention, I'm going to start this, and somebody else heard me talk about it, and they said, hey, that's a great idea, and they work on the same thing at the same time, and for whatever reason, they're able to get it done before me, so that now they're technically first to market, even though it was my idea. There's a lot of these risks in announcing things, I think, hardware and or software. But on that note, it was important to me to provide rather than announce. But I do want to spitball if you guys here for 2 more seconds, and then we can wrap it up, or we can keep going. I don't care. But some things that have been cooking in my mind, and a lot of this has to come to do with what Curtis has been showing us on a lot of the news lately, like a lot of these dragon games that are kind of like text adventures that turn the genre a little bit on its ear, where it wasn't just the you're in room X what to do prompt. There were status bars or split screen or things like that, or an RPG element or a progress tracker. I saw all those little snippets and I said, you know what? I'd like to do something like that. So on my wish list, on my imaginary to-do list of things I might do at some point in time, continuing, I want to really play with the Coco VGA. I think this is a great opportunity to do something with the 64 column mode, to come up with what I'll call an adventure game plus, right? Where it is still somewhat of the classic genre, but maybe a status bar, maybe a score keeper, maybe like a little mini map or other things like that. So that is a project I intend to maybe do one day, and I'm throwing that out there, and somebody else may beat me to market. And if they do, that's great, because then I want to play it. But that's an idea. I'm just kind of spitballing a few guys. That's just, sometimes we get inspiration. We see things, we hear things, we want to put our spin on it, so that's a project I'd like to do down the road.
Well, one of the reasons I wrote the 64 column code for graphics, it doesn't work on the Coco because of artifacting, of course, but on a couple other computers was so that I could use it for and like an Infocom engine.
Yeah.
Or I can't remember the name of the one. There was one of the European ones. They had the Pawn, and
just waiting for it to boil down enough so I can stick some cheese in it.
Thank you for sharing that, David.
Yeah, we just muted you, David.
We're excited, David.
Yeah. you woke up Jim.
Yeah.
David's waiting to stick some cheese in it.
I don't know what they're sticking cheese in, but...
Okay, normally that's not normal, so I'm not even going to continue this particular conversation. So. Done with that.
Okay. There was a company that made some games that they had some graphics that went along with the game. They did the Pawn, I remember, on the Amiga, and they had some music and some other things. And I was doing pieces that could be used in different games. And I think with a little, if you do like a modern, it's not Infocom interpreter, but it's kind of a derivative of that. It's I can't remember the name of it. There's a whole group dedicated towards developing adventure games with this new tool. And if we were to develop an engine or something with either the Coco VGA or whatever, we could create some really, neat stuff with a standard engine, and you just use the tool and only use the stuff that we support.
Yeah. So kind of like the Z interpreter for Infocom, once the interpreter's done, or like the Sierra AGI thing, like that adventure game interpreter. Once you got that core engine developed on the Coco.
One of the things I did back on the Amiga was I developed a library of stuff for loading images, loading sounds, playing sounds, whatever. And if we did that sort of thing, for the Coco, then we could have that type of...
Right. And that's why I'm also intrigued with the idea of CMOC. Even though I've never programmed in C before, I'm thinking that's also now on my wish list of things to do. Yeah, I want to do something in BASIC 09, but I think I might almost want to do something in CMOC before I do a BASIC 09.
It lends itself to libraries of functions.
Yeah. So I think there are tools out there, especially since CMOC and Pear are doing things to support the Coco VGA. I'm really infatuated with the Coco VGA. I think this is basically making like a Coco 1.5, Coco 2.5 scenario. And I'd like to be one of the maybe only few players on that park for maybe a limited time and do something. So that's kind of where my mentality is right now, is making some stuff that's going to be in this kind of plus zone. It's like a Coco Plus. We have more colors. We've got 64 columns. We've got some things. It's not quite a Coco 3, but I think I want to explore this space. So a lot of ideas are coming into my head, and I think an adventure game plus is one idea that would be fun to play with. That wouldn't need a ton of speed, it just needs real estate on the screen, things like that. So,
yeah, that's why I was kind of, when I was talking to Brendan that night, I want to get one.
Yeah,
but I gotta wait for him to get around to getting it made and everything.
And I think that becomes a challenge right now, right, with hardware. So we're sitting here talking about hardware and hardware wish list and what are the consumer demands versus producer demands. But supply and demand and supply bottleneck, I think, are a very real challenge, right? Right now, Brendan is the only producer of the Coco VGA, so we're at his mercy, right? And it's not a diss on him, but it's uncanny that Ed Snyder produces as much stuff as he does, right?
And even Ed, I mean, he does bursts of, like, he does some SDCs and then he takes off.
Yeah,
for,
but see, that's
some other
to
stuff.
me, for as many people who want an SDC, and we've only got this one guy to produce them, and he's not, and that's not the only thing he's producing. There can become a supply bottleneck for SDCs. If there was a second provider of SDCs, that would be, it'd be a benefit to somebody who says, hey, I don't want to wait. We had that conversation. It's a 40-year-old machine. Do you need it in 2 days? But, somebody wants an SDC and they don't want to wait 2 weeks.
And it also depends on the itch to scratch, because some of the hardware developers enjoy developing the hardware. Manufacturing the same thing over and over again, it's just not that interesting.
It's not fun.
Yeah.
It's tedious.
So having alternate supply chains
and
might
that
be
reminds
nice.
me, I need to get a Coco SDC so that I can do some stuff, because I don't have one anymore.
And Rob Inman is really a contender to be a future troll. He's like a product announcement from Retro Innovations. Coco Talk After Dark sets high expectations only to drag on endlessly and ultimately never deliver. That is very Jim Brain-esque right there.
I was ribbing Ed earlier about selling me something that he didn't sell anymore.
Yeah.
But he did refund me right away. It wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of like, oh man, I really wanted that item. Mm-hmm. But I in his defense, when I bought the Coco SDC, it came relatively quickly, and it works like a charm. I just absolutely love it.
Yeah. I have never had to wait very long for anything I've ordered from any of the Coco vendors. So that part's been good.
Well, you should order from me, and then you can get that experience.
Yeah, well, I have. Well, I actually got from you straight from Coco Fest, so that was the benefit.
True.
So
I want serial number 0001 of the Gimme X.
so if you don't mind, Jim, and then maybe this is a sore spot for you, but can we talk about the Coco Flash? And
sure.
And is there any new developments on a user-friendly orifice for this?
We're back to that software question again, are we?
Yeah, really. So you brought it up, and so I was I think it's good to kind of segue into that. So you brought up the C compiler for the Coco, and like I said, my assembly language capabilities are pretty bad on the 6809. However, I am a C developer, so I actually downloaded CMOC, and I'm trying to get it all kind of set up and figuring out kind of how to do that, because I found out the reference software that I use to kind of show people what I hope to have for the Coco Flash is a product that another individual, Thomas Giesel, developed for the Commodore 64. It's a very popular piece of hardware. It's called the Easy Flash 3. And it has a very nice graphical interface that you're allowed to use, or that you use. The menu comes up, and you select the cartridge that you want to play, and then it
looks amazingly like the picture for my.
On your profile picture.
Yes. So anyway, I have downloaded CMOC, and then I realized the other day, because I was trying to get the Easy Flash 3 software kind of updated and whatnot, I realized that all that code is written in C. And so I thought, well, now that actually might not be a bad idea. I mean, James has got some ideas as well. He's showing up on his screen, and either one's an option. But the problem I have is that's one where it's a really it's a little bit awkward to talk about it, so I mean, I'll just throw this out here, but obviously people are going to watch it later because it's on YouTube. So when I first started developing Coco Flash, I knew that I was not going to be able to develop the software, and so I approached someone to develop the software. And initially there was, hey, yeah, this sounds like a really good idea, and then very shortly thereafter, a person came back and said, well, I'm in some prior commitments with another manufacturer of Coco equipment, and I talked to that other individual, and they're not real comfortable with me working with you to build a product that might compete, so can't do that. And so I'm like, well, that's a bummer. And so I went ahead and started continuing to work on the hardware, and I kept reaching out, seeing if there was some folks to do the software. And so Barry Nelson and his daughter Barry sent me a note and said, "Hey, I'd like to help you with software." And I'm like, "Great," because I mean, I currently don't know very much about how to write software for this space anyway. So he and his daughter worked on the software, and so got it all done and got it put out there, and that's what the units come shipped with. But as soon as it got out, there was a number of individuals who got units, and they said, "Well, it's a little bit difficult to put new images into the unit, and it really would be nice to have something a little bit more kind of turnkey." And so I reached out, and of course Barry and his daughter kind of have moved on and done some other stuff, and so they're like, "Well, this is what we were able to offer you." And I'm like, "I appreciate that. There's just some requests for some enhancements, and there just really wasn't a lot of appetite for changing that." So then a little while later, and I'm going to mess up his name, but I think it's Pere Sarad, I think is the guy's name.
Yeah.
Reached out and said, "Hey, I'd like to get this working for the Dragon." And I'm like, "Great." And so we talked a little bit about building some screens and doing some things differently and whatnot. And I think I had yourself and Grant Leedy and David Ladd. I said, maybe you could work with these guys because they have really good ideas about, what the screen should look like or how people should be able to navigate through the system. And so that was going on for a little while. And then I think he got a part of it done that he felt like delivered what he was looking for. And I think he was starting to work on some other things. And so I know that there was like a laundry list of things like, okay, this would be nice to change this and change that or whatnot. Well, then just nothing more developed on that side. And so then that really wasn't something that I could kind of put the units in because it was kind of an unfinished fashion. And then there was an individual who sent me an email maybe it was earlier this year, I think. And he said, "Hey, I bought this unit. It only works on fully populated Coco 1s and 2s. It like requires 32K or 64K or whatever." And he said, I have units that are that don't have that much RAM, and so I developed another way of doing this that's more like a solution that's on the Apple II, where you do all the work to get everything packaged up and programmed on the PC. So you do all your work on the PC, and then you just ship this kind of final payload over to the Coco through like a serial port or whatever, and it just dumps it in. But it's a very specific workflow, and so I obviously grateful for that individual and whatnot. But I knew that there were a lot of people that were looking for more something that was done from the Coco itself. So here's the Coco, and here's my Coco SDC, and I got my Coco Flash and MPI, and I kind of run it from there. So it's a little bit challenging because on the one hand, that's a particular case where I have had a couple folks who have worked on solutions in that space. I'm very grateful for them to do that. But the one is there and it works, but it doesn't have all the features that people are looking for. One's got more features, but it's not finished. And then the third one has a completely different way of doing things that isn't really of interest to a lot of the folks who buy the product. So it's just kind of a challenge. Is like, part of it is, you can't really tell these folks, "Hey, well, that's great, but it's not really what."
Yeah, right. You don't want to bite a hand that's trying to help you, right?
That's right. And so there's a challenge there. And so I think the solution is going to need to be that either like James is able to help, or I can work on the C code or whatnot. But right now it's kind of in that state of
I mean, that's
where do you go from here?
That's a product. I just think that the Coco Flash should be the next best thing to the Coco SDC. I mean, it's got that much potential, and we just need that killer app. Actually, as you mentioned, the serial download, I'm not opposed to that. That's not a terrible burden to ask on somebody. It's not an unachievable goal. I might be interested in learning how to do that, because I mean, I've got the one that day I got from you, and I've got the 4 things that are on it, and those all work great. But I've tried looking at Barry's code. I've tried getting a few documents sent to me from either it was you or your website, or if it was Barry, or if it was Henry Reitveld. I mean, I looked at a few things, and it's kind of like what Paul Shoemaker was saying earlier. Ed Snyder had some great documentation, but it just didn't make sense to him even after reading it 5 times. He needed to find a different way to open his mind to what the information was before he could digest that information. Right. I looked at that documentation. That was Greek. And I think it's because if you program assembly and you're used to writing to RAM and you're used to the idea of registers, then that's probably a more intuitive, commonsensical type thing. But to a layperson, it's literally, it's an alien language,
Yep. No, I agree. I understand.
So, and it's not faulting you. But I like the idea of that product. I bought it because I believe in you and I want to support you, and I'm looking forward to using it one day. And I look forward to maybe even one day being able to help to that. But I've been a lazy schmuck when it comes to learning assembly and stuff too. So if I had many things on my wish list, it would be to maybe at some point help contribute to that project too. But realistically, it's not going to happen probably this year. So right. I'm not your lifeline. But I do believe in you, and I will support you. So
yeah. I'd like to get to something where it's, kind of that reach fruition of what the bulk of the user base wants. And again, the other pieces aren't problematic. It's just a matter of finding that space where your product hardware has a piece of software that kind of matches up with most people's expectations about what the software for it should be, right? And that's kind of the challenge. And part of it is, it's a little bit unfortunate, but part of it is the multi-cart, which is what space that plays in. Mm-hmm. The multi-cart is available for a whole bunch of different platforms, Apple, Atari, and whatnot. And they all sort of run down the same venue as far as software is concerned. So if you deviate too much from that, the way the software is set up, then people start to say, well, you know what? It's like a car. Like all the cars have steering wheel, and the turn signals are on one side, and the washer, windshield wiper things on the other side. You start mucking around with where those things are on the car, and then people are like, "This is not intuitive," because I expect to pick up a car on all my classic pick up a cartridge on all my classic platforms, and I expect the way to interact with this multi-cart to be X, and it really should be the same for all of them, with just minor changes. And so that's the kind of challenge, is you're fighting against a kind of a setup that's already been defined, and you didn't get to have really any decisioning in it. It's just already defined.
Right. All right. So if there's a takeaway from this whole long-winded thing we've been doing tonight, I would say, ideally, if we were to reach out to the community and say, what roles can people fill? One of those roles would be in the area of helping in documentation, both in the technical side of the documentation, but also in the kind of cheat sheet, user guide, quick reference parts. So if there are people who are good document creators or good intermediary people who are somewhat technical but not super technical, that would know enough to ask the questions to say, hey, I want to make this cheat sheet for idiots. Is this good? Is this right? That could help ask you the questions to make that, we'll call it middleware. That would be a great role, to reach out to find volunteers, or even, as you're saying, people you would even pay to do for you. So we would like to have some people to maybe help you, the hardware folks, come up with this super tech document and our fluffy document. And as was mentioned, as what this somewhat kind of, to me, the kind of, hey, Curtis, I love the sound of that keyboard. But the whole idea of, not only do we need software, as in, we could say we need software work. Well, there's a sound chip. We need a game that uses that sound chip. Yeah, that's great. But how about just something like Chet Simpson's doing, where he's going to create this middleware library of stuff where anybody can take this code and then start adding audio to a project. So people who can help make tools and intermediary things to help soften the blow of developing for a new piece of hardware, we need more like that if we're going to have this wish list, right? And so Chet Simpson's doing some work in that area. Sheldon McDonald is working on some of that too, where he's been showing his videos where he's got an IRQ-based machine language player that will play music on the GMC in the background, so your basic code can still run while the music's playing. Those are going to be great tools, and it's great that there are people who have the know-how to do that. And we want to make sure we applaud those people, recognize those people. But if we were to ask, maybe could we get a few more people like that? That would probably help out the Jim Brains of the world and everybody else, right? So if there are people who end up listening to this now or later, and that person might be you or someone you know, then maybe reach out to our hardware folks and give them a hand, right?
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm willing to help, but I need the time, and I need to replace a few things, towards my Coco so that I have a reasonable system to develop with. So.
Yeah, in my case, it's mainly been time. I mean, I'm supposed to be working on some of Jim's projects, and I was in my rush season of work, so I haven't been working on much of anything.
Okay, so I'm hearing this time excuse being thrown around a lot. So can anybody develop either hardware or software time, perhaps? Because everybody seems to be having this time.
It involves a real-time clock. And
yeah. I know what I noticed from you, Curtis, when you come off of mute is when you come back over-modulated, because you muted yourself, and then you unmuted, and now you're hot. Right, so I don't know if that's something.
It must be something weird with the blue driver then, because it's just the mute button on the blue itself.
Yeah. So, now listen, I enjoyed this discussion.
Time transplant.
What's that, Chet?
We can all use a time transplant.
Oh yeah, or yeah. What? I have to rip up the wires and design. Oh, okay. So you're answering Rob Inman. Rob Inman. All right. So we want to put a fork in this.
Yep.
Have we done it? Well, I want to thank you guys. I mean, it's really good. I would like to get more hard. I hopefully we've gleaned something, right? We heard a little bit from Jim Brain. We heard a little bit from John Strong. There's other people out there making hardware, and it's easy for us to just get angry or have an opinion or say something that might be dismissive towards these producers of these things. And hopefully we can do a job of maybe being more empathetic to some of these struggles, right? And
they need help with the support, whether it's software writing, whether it's writing technical manuals, whether it's writing user manuals, whether it's helping design GUIs to make things easier to use for the average user, that kind of thing. Yeah.
So hopefully we can continue these conversations to get some more people on. I know it was my last minute attempt to invite some more hardware folks on to talk about hardware stuff. Maybe we can get more of that stuff going. And at least identify some of our wants and needs, both from the consumer and producer side, and maybe find a way to address some of those things in having realistic expectations, right? There's what you want, and there's what we can realistically do, and maybe defining some of those things and coming up with a plan to achieve some of those things. That might be productive, right? All right. Well, has this been a serious discussion tonight? Have we been serious? Soulful?
Mostly.
Were we soulful at all at any time during the course of the evening? I don't know.
This was almost a round table.
I don't know that this was superior entertainment, but it was some form of entertainment to someone, hopefully. Well,
maybe we put some people to sleep.
Yeah, it might have been. It could have been. Yes, if those of you who had insomnia, you're welcome.
Gobble, gobble.
Thanks, guys. I definitely, I look forward to, I look forward to just hearing the stuff that you guys do. The software guys, the hardware guys. I love this stuff. I eat it up. I'm a junkie for it. So I love that these things are still happening. So, and hopefully they'll continue to happen and all that good stuff. And kumbaya. All right, so Chet Simpson, thank you and good night. Any final thoughts with your awesome multicolored background there?
Yeah, I'm going to bed, man.
All right, man. Yeah, man. Yeah, where's Ronnie Chong when we need him, man? Ron was on fire today.
Where is he? Oh, he left, man.
Yeah,
I missed that.
Ron's not here, man.
Outlasted him.
Yes, Al Curtis Boyle. Any final thoughts from you, sir?
Well, I do hope to start working on Jim's CocoaMem Jr. as long with EOU, which I kind of promised everybody too at the same time, since work has died down. Once my mom's condition is stabilized, then I can start spending some evenings, because I've been spending a lot of time in the hospital the last couple of weeks. So,
yeah.
And she's doing better, just to let you guys know. So it looks like it's going the right direction.
Excellent.
And also, while we were having this show here, I've pretty well got Marble Madness now running in native mode with a TFM or two. So
so that's what all the beating on the keyboard was?
Yeah.
Well, then it was worth it. Excellent. Now that's a cool project too. I look forward to it. And this is what I like. If I was to toot a horn here for a second, we had so many things going on today's show, and almost all of us were in the dark about what was going on. Like you and Nick dropped some really cool bombs that pretty much only you and Nick knew about, right? I was holding something back. Everybody had something, and we all just kind of came together and said, hey, guess what? Surprise, surprise, surprise. So this was like, today's show was like so cool to see that there's just so much crap going on, and it was really cool. And so I continue to love to be, pleasantly surprised by the things that continue to happen in this group,
And it's a nice surprise to do it where we notified you we are going to be doing something, so it's not a complete surprise when we disrupt the flow of the show, but we don't have to give you all the details until we actually do the review.
Yeah, and there's something, like I said, that's kind of was my thing too. I don't want to announce an intention. I'd rather show you something, and like you kind of did that today, right? You showed us. You didn't talk about speeding something up. You showed us the sped up results. So results talk, right? Garrett Reynolds in the live chat is just saying, as an end user of various hardware and software projects, hats off to you all and keep up the good work. Your efforts do not go unnoticed. Thanks, Garrett. I would agree with you. Yeah. John Lowry, as a prominent and prolific provider of pontification, what are your
my parting words of wisdom? Shut up and take my money.
Excellent. And David Ladd, Mr. Enthusiasm.
Mr. Cheese.
Any Mr. Cheese? You can put some cheese in something. I'm not sure where he was putting his cheese. Any final thoughts from you, David?
Oh, yes. Let's get lots of cocoa stuff together.
David Ladd cuts the cheese.
Yeah, he's almost a disincentive to making new projects because you have to hear that kind of crap all the time.
Oh yes, Curtis, you know you want some.
Oh wow! I don't know if Paul's there. Paul's picture is very prominent.
What's the Amiga group like? Retro Innovations there. I'm thinking of switching or something here.
If you think there's infighting in the Coco group, you have seen nothing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you like drama, then definitely the Amiga group would be fun for you.
Maybe I should pick a more obscure machine like the Odyssey 2 or something. Maybe.
Yeah, you probably have better luck with that. I mean,
the MC10. Then you only have to put up with the doorstop comments.
That's right.
And what about the other David Ladd who's on mute right now? Does the other David Ladd have any parting thoughts to?
Yes, Stevie. We need more Coco hardware.
And James Diffendaffer, final thoughts from you, sir.
I'll see if I can get together with Jim and maybe ask Curtis a few Coco questions so that we can maybe get some of the stuff I talked about for Jim.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I'm not playing suck up here right now, but I do think, Jim's company name is Retro Innovations, and I do think some of the things he's doing are pretty innovative. There's things that just had not existed before. So the fact he's come up with 8-port and 16-port multi-pack ideas and 4-port serial cards and the Coco SDC extender and all these things, they are all truly innovative. And I can't imagine some of the struggles you have, not only designing the hardware, but now, this whole, the whole topic of we need more software. Yeah. I mean, it's a rhetorical statement. It's almost like it's a common sense thing to say, but let's try to take it to the next step, and let's really identify the challenges and maybe make some steps towards getting that software out there. So thanks for your time, Jim, and your insight and for everything you are trying to do for us. We appreciate it. And hopefully we can show you more love and support in the way of software and sales as time goes on, right? So,
true. Yeah, I do feel guilty with Jim. Like I was promising to help, I think it was along with Dave Phillipson, to get the CocoMem Junior. We actually got the boot partly working. It went to a certain spot, and it didn't stay at the same spot. It would sometimes get further and sometimes not. I think I'm actually going to backtrack and maybe just take Tormod's Moo version and just see if I can retrofit that, because I'm not sure exactly what Dave did porting level 2 backwards. So I'm probably have to restart that project just to see if I can get it running properly. But at least I got to help you a tiny bit with the CocoMem. What do you call it? The CocoMem Senior?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
For the video stuff.
That's right. We did some tests the other day, so that's good. And I think the key is, it is it's somewhat challenging in that I think if somebody has a good grasp of software, then when they're working with somebody and collaborating, they can kind of help. Like I've worked on software projects with other folks, writing them in C or whatnot. And when you have an understanding of the software language or software development capabilities, then even if you're doing hardware, you can kind of collaborate with those people and whatnot. It's kind of bad, or it kind of makes you feel, I guess, a little embarrassed when you're working on a hardware perspective and somebody comes to you and says, well, I can help with software. Could you tell me about this part of the software? Or do you have any sample code or whatever? And you kind of have to say, listen, I have nothing, right? I don't have any capability really to do this other than a little crappy basic program that I wrote to test it out. And I think that almost turned some folks off from the software elements. Like, man, this guy is so clueless. How could he even design the hardware? Chances are it doesn't even work. I should probably back away from it. And you really want to say, no, really, I know how to do hardware. I do. I just suck at software. It's really just software that I suck at. So, so in any event, I think that's the thing. It would be cooler, obviously, if those of us who do hardware, and maybe even on the software side of it too, I have a feeling that there's somebody out there who's doing the other half, which is they have this great idea for a piece of software, but they're like, man, for this to work, there needs this other piece of hardware, and I suck at hardware. And, they're having somebody to work alongside them. And I think the hardware person's probably like, really, do you have any idea how hardware works? Because it's kind of complicated in this other area. And it's obviously much easier for people who in the community who can kind of do both sides of it. Makes it a lot easier for them to kind of get the ball rolling. So that's kind of an unfortunate situation that folks like myself find ourselves into. But we do rely somewhat heavily on others to kind of help us bring this stuff to fruition.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting you say that, because a couple of months ago I was watching a video by Ben Eder, and he's a hardware guy.
Yep, I saw his stuff, yeah.
He made a two-part video about how a VGA card works.
It was an awesome video.
Yeah, and when I watched it, the takeaway I had is, you know what, creating hardware is a lot like writing software, because he's basically making counters and stuff for when to change the signal and so on and so forth. And it made me realize that a lot of hardware is, in certain ways, is like just hard coding software, essentially.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's fair. True enough. It is. And I can write 62.9 assembly, but it's just, I think part of it is there's all these, people who've been doing it for a long time. They just know how to construct everything, so it's really elegant and whatnot. And if I left my own devices, it's like when you design anything first time, you're just learning. It's just at the end, you're not really sure if it's your code that's not working or whatever it is you're trying to control that's not working, but whatever it is, it's not working. And I think you just get demoralized.
Yeah.
Huh. Wow.
Alrighty. Well, I'm out of here, guys.
Well, we're done talking for now. Hopefully this won't be the end of these conversations. Pretty free form, covered a lot of stuff, but I appreciate everyone. And we're going to go ahead and press the button on the show. Thank you, guys. And, tomorrow's another day, man. Let's make some hardware. Let's make some software. Let's make it happen, man. Let's do this. All right. Good night, everybody. Say good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
All right. Good night.